10-year-old Zara Kingston collapsed in the airplane aisle, her small body crumpling to the floor. She was gasping for air, lips turning pale, her life-saving inhaler just inches from her outstretched hand but impossibly out of reach. Above her stood the flight attendant, Christine Parker, arms crossed, her expression a mask of cold indifference. The ordeal had begun the moment Zara boarded the flight from Dallas to Seattle. It was her first time traveling alone, a brave little girl with colorful beads in her braids and a purple unicorn backpack on her way to visit her aunt for spring break. Christine Parker, a blonde flight attendant in her early 50s, had singled her out immediately. She'd forced Zara to empty the contents of her backpack in the aisle as other passengers stared, then arbitrarily moved her from the window seat her father had carefully selected. The humiliation was a cold knot in Zara's stomach before the plane had even left the ground. 30 minutes into the flight, Zara politely asked for a glass of water. Christine ignored her. When Zara asked again, a little louder, the flight attendant snapped, "You'll get it when I have time." An hour passed, then 2. Zara still had nothing to drink. When she finally pressed the call button, Christine appeared instantly, her face a thundercloud. She accused Zara of disrupting the flight, and the passengers nearby were quick to agree. "So entitled, these kids," one woman remarked. "No home training," another muttered under his breath. When Zara desperately needed the restroom, Christine made her wait for 25 agonizing minutes, a public shaming that left the little girl fighting back tears. During the snack service, Christine served every single passenger in the surrounding rows, her smile never faltering. She walked past Zara as if she were invisible. When Zara finally found the courage to ask why she'd been skipped, Christine replied coolly, "Paying passengers come first." Zara's father had, of course, paid for her ticket, but that fact was irrelevant. A businessman named Robert tried to give Zara his own bottle of water, but Christine physically blocked him, threatening to have him removed from the flight upon landing. A young mother named Jennifer spoke up, her voice trembling with anger, saying this was fundamentally wrong. The other passengers turned on her. "Always someone playing the victim card," they sneered. "The flight attendant is just doing her job." It was 3 hours of unrelenting torment. A 10-year-old child denied water, food, and basic human dignity. And then it got worse. The immense stress triggered Zara's asthma. Her chest tightened. She fumbled in her backpack for her inhaler, but her hands were trembling too much. It slipped from her grasp, rolling into the aisle. "Help, please," she gasped, her voice barely a whisper. She couldn't breathe. Christine looked down at the inhaler on the floor, then at the little girl whose face was now ashen. "You dropped it. You pick it up," she said, her voice dripping with contempt. "I'm not your maid." "She's having an asthma attack," Robert screamed from his seat. Jennifer rushed to help, but it was too late. Zara stumbled into the aisle, her vision blurring, her lungs burning. She took 2 desperate steps, then collapsed, her head striking an armrest before her small body went completely limp. The cabin erupted into chaos. A doctor rushed from first class as the crew finally sprang into action, calling for paramedics. The plane was diverted for an emergency landing in Seattle. As they carried Zara's unconscious form off the aircraft, a single word escaped her lips. "Daddy." What none of them knew, what Christine Parker and the passengers who had supported her cruelty could never have imagined, was who Zara's father was. Dimitri Kingston wasn't just any dad. He was the CEO of AeroVantage, one of the largest air carriers in the country. And when his phone rang with the news that his daughter was in a hospital, barely alive, the world shifted on its axis. The reckoning that was coming would shake the entire aviation industry to its core. To understand the full horror of what happened on that flight, one must go back to that morning at Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, to what was supposed to be the most exciting day of Zara Kingston's young life. Zara was a petite 10-year-old, her long braids adorned with colorful beads that clicked softly as she walked. She clutched a stuffed unicorn named Sparkles and wore her favorite purple backpack, covered in patches. This was her great adventure, her first solo flight to spend 2 weeks with her Aunt Grace. At the security checkpoint, her father knelt before her, his large hands resting gently on her small shoulders. Dimitri Kingston was a tall, imposing man, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit. He was the CEO of AeroVantage Airlines, a man who knew the industry inside and out, its safety records, its protocols, its statistics. That was precisely why he had chosen Pacific Northwest Airlines for his daughter's flight. Their safety record, was flawless. "Remember what I told you, princess," he said softly. "Keep your inhaler in the front pocket where you can reach it. If you feel even a little bit tight in your chest, you use it right away. Don't wait." Zara nodded, trying to look brave. "And call me the second you land," he continued. "Not 5 minutes after. The second." "I will, Daddy. I promise." He pulled her into a fierce hug. "You'll do great, princess. I love you more than all the stars in the sky." What Zara didn't know was that her father was also flying to Seattle that day for a business conference. His flight was scheduled to depart 2 hours after hers, from a different terminal. The plan was for them to meet and surprise her aunt together. Instead, that plan had spiraled into every parent's worst nightmare. At gate C-47, the gate agent smiled warmly at Zara, checking her unaccompanied minor paperwork. "First time flying alone, sweetie? You're going to do wonderful." But the moment Zara stepped onto the plane, the atmosphere changed. Christine Parker stood at the entrance, her features sharp, her demeanor sharper. When her eyes landed on the small black girl with a stuffed animal, her lips pressed into a thin, hard line. "Stop right there," she commanded, blocking Zara's path. "Where are your parents?" "I'm 10, ma'am," Zara said, confused. "I'm traveling alone. I have my paperwork." Christine snatched the folder from Zara's hand, scrutinizing each page with theatrical slowness as the line of passengers grew behind them. Finally, she handed it back. "Empty your backpack, right here, for security." "But security already checked it." "This is my aircraft. I can inspect any baggage I deem necessary. Empty it." Cheeks burning with shame, Zara knelt and pulled out her book, her iPad, her trail mix, and finally, her inhaler. Christine picked it up. "What's this for?" "I have asthma," Zara said quietly. "Of course you do," Christine muttered, dropping it back into the pile. As Zara hastily repacked her things, Christine examined her boarding pass. "A window seat? Unacceptable for an unaccompanied minor. You'll sit in 22D, an aisle seat, for proper supervision." "But my dad chose—" "Your dad isn't here, is he? Move." As Zara made her way down the aisle, an elderly man in her new row grumbled, "Great, a kid. This is going to be a long flight." The woman beside him smiled tightly. "Parents these days just don't care." Zara pretended not to hear, sinking into her seat and holding Sparkles tight. She was brave. Her daddy believed in her. Only a few more hours, she told herself. But as the beverage cart began its journey down the aisle 30 minutes later, she realized her nightmare had only just begun. Christine returned, her irritation a thin veil over her impatience. "What is it now?" Zara's voice was small, almost lost in the cabin's hum. "May I please have a snack? You didn't give me one." Christine looked down at the child, her eyes cold and dismissive. "We have limited supplies. Paying passengers come first." "But my dad paid for my ticket," Zara said, her brow furrowed in confusion. "Don't you get smart with me, young lady?" A woman named Karen gasped from a nearby seat. The audacity. When I was her age, I would never have dreamed of talking back like that. Harold, beside her, shook his head with theatrical gravity. Kids today, they think everything should just be handed to them. Then Linda, from across the aisle, spoke the words that laid the ugly truth bare. "She's probably lying about paying anyway." Zara's face crumbled. She offered no defense, no argument. She simply turned away and stared out the window, tears tracing silent paths down her cheeks. 3 rows up, Robert Chen had heard enough. He rose, his unopened snack pack in hand, and walked back to Zara's seat. "Here, sweetheart," he said gently, offering it to her. "You can have mine." Before Zara's small hand could even reach for it, Christine intercepted, snatching the snack from his grasp. "I already told you, sir. You cannot give items to unaccompanied minors without authorization." Robert's voice rose, edged with disbelief. "This is absurd. She's a child, not a prisoner." "That is your final warning, sir," Christine snapped. "Sit down now, or I'm calling the captain." The cabin, a tinderbox of judgment, erupted again. "He's harassing her," a passenger from row 20 shouted. "She's just doing her job." Another voice joined the chorus. Some people think the rules don't apply to them. The mob had found its cause. They had cast themselves as righteous defenders of order, supporters of authority. In their self-congratulatory haze, they were blind to the fact that they were partners in the persecution of a lonely, frightened child. Outnumbered and threatened, Robert retreated to his seat, his hands shaking with a mixture of frustration and impotent rage. Then, Jennifer Martinez stood. Her voice trembled, but not with fear. "This is wrong," she declared, her words cutting through the noise. "That child has done nothing but exist, and you are all torturing her." Karen rolled her eyes. "Oh, please, don't be so dramatic." "Always someone playing the victim card," Linda scoffed. Jennifer held up her phone. "I'm documenting this," she said, her voice gaining strength. "Every single moment, and the world is going to see what you did." Harold laughed dismissively. "Go ahead and film. You'll just prove the flight attendant was right." But in that moment, the petty cruelties of the flight were about to be eclipsed by a far more terrifying reality. The combination of 3 hours of stress, dehydration, hunger, and humiliation was taking its toll on Zara's small body. Her asthma, carefully managed for 5 years, began to stir. It started subtly, a quickening of her breath, a shallow pull for air. She felt the familiar tightening in her chest, a sensation like a vice slowly squeezing her lungs. She knew this feeling. She knew what was coming. She needed her inhaler. Now. Her small hands shaking, Zara reached for the backpack under the seat in front of her. Her breathing grew more labored with each passing second, each breath a desperate struggle. She fumbled the zipper open, but her inhaler had slipped to the very bottom, tangled in a headphone cord. Karen noticed her frantic movements. "What's wrong with her now?" Harold barely glanced over. Probably just another act for attention. But this was no act. A faint, audible wheeze now accompanied Zara's breathing, the distinctive whistling sound that signals a desperate fight for air. Her fingers finally closed around the plastic case. She pulled it out, but her hands, starved of oxygen, were trembling too violently. The inhaler slipped through her grasp, clattered to the floor, and rolled into the aisle, coming to a stop just 3 feet from her seat. Zara stared at it, her vision starting to blur. She clawed at her seatbelt buckle, wheezing so hard she couldn't even call for help. A desperate, gasping sound was all that escaped her lips. "Help, please." Drawn by the commotion, Christine appeared in the aisle. She looked down at Zara, gasping for air. She saw the inhaler lying on the floor between them, and then, in a moment of cruelty that would haunt every witness for the rest of their lives, she looked from the life-saving device to the child whose lips were beginning to turn pale. "You dropped it," she said, her voice cold and unmoved. "You pick it up. I'm not your maid." From 3 rows away, Robert Chen spun around in his seat, his eyes wide with horror. "She's having an asthma attack! Get her the inhaler!" Jennifer Martinez was already unbuckling her seatbelt, her voice a choked cry. "Are you insane? She can't breathe!" But Christine stood her ground, arms crossed, a statue of indifference. "She's fine. She's been dramatic this entire flight. This is just another performance." With the last of her strength, Zara unbuckled her belt and stumbled into the aisle. The cabin spun around her, the angry voices fading into a distant underwater roar. Her vision narrowed to a dark tunnel. She took one unsteady step, then another, her small hand reaching for the inhaler. And then her legs gave out. Her knees buckled and she collapsed, her small body crumpling like a puppet with its strings cut. On the way down, her head struck the armrest of the opposite seat with a sickening thud. She hit the floor and lay completely still. The cabin erupted into chaos. "Call for medical help," Robert shouted, pushing his way down the aisle. Jennifer snatched the inhaler from the floor and dropped to her knees beside Zara's motionless form. She cradled the little girl's head in her lap, her hands shaking violently. "Baby, can you hear me? I've got your inhaler. Come on, sweetie, breathe." She tried to administer a puff, but Zara was unresponsive. Her lips were pale, tinged with a terrifying blue. "She's not breathing right," Jennifer screamed. "We need a doctor. Is there a doctor on this plane?" A younger flight attendant, Sarah, ran from the galley, her face a mask of terror. "Oh my God, Christine, what did you do?" Christine stood frozen, the color draining from her face as the magnitude of her actions crashed down on her. She just collapsed. I didn't..." Even then, the passengers who had supported her began to weave their excuses. "Well, how were we supposed to know this time was different?" Harold muttered defensively. Robert Chen's voice, though quiet, silenced the entire cabin. Are you serious right now? This child was denied food and water. She was humiliated. And when she was dying, you all supported the woman who stood by and watched. Look at her. Look at what you've done. The plane fell silent, save for Jennifer's broken sobs. Is there a medical doctor on board? Sarah pleaded into the intercom. From first class, a woman in her 50s hurried back. Dr. Patricia Hughes, a pediatrician, knelt beside Zara, her professional calm taking over. How long has she been without her inhaler? She asked sharply. Jennifer, weeping, could barely speak. At least 10 minutes. It was right there. And she pointed a trembling finger at Christine. She wouldn't help her. Dr. Hughes's gaze shot to Christine, her eyes blazing with contempt. You did what? She turned back to Zara, administering the inhaler. Come on, sweetheart, breathe for me. Seconds stretched into an eternity. Then a flicker. A shallow rise of Zara's chest. Her eyelids fluttered. She's breathing, Dr. Hughes said, relief flooding her voice. But it's weak. She needs a hospital. Now. As the plane began a rapid descent toward Seattle, emergency lights flashing on the tarmac below, Dr. Hughes never left Zara's side. The moment the plane stopped, paramedics rushed aboard. What's her name? The lead paramedic asked. Zara Kingston, Sarah replied, her hands shaking. She's 10 years old. Emergency contact? Her father, Dimitri Kingston. As they secured an oxygen mask over Zara's face, her eyes fluttered open for a brief, heartbreaking moment. Through the plastic, a single word escaped, so faint it was almost a thought. Daddy. Then her eyes closed and she was rushed off the plane. Airport police boarded immediately after. An officer walked straight to Christine. We need to speak with you, he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Sarah handed him Jennifer's phone. Officer, this passenger documented everything. The officer scrolled through the notes, his jaw tightening with every line he read. He looked up at Jennifer and Robert. I'm going to need formal statements from you both. As Christine was escorted off the plane, she passed Zara's empty seat. A stuffed unicorn still sat there, a silent witness to a journey that had become a nightmare. None of them knew. None of them could possibly imagine who Dimitri Kingston was. They didn't know that at that very moment, in a conference room at a hotel near the airport, his phone was ringing. The caller ID read Seattle Children's Hospital. His heart stopped. Hello? He answered, his voice tight with dread. Mr. Kingston? This is Dr. Morrison at Seattle Children's. Your daughter, Zara, was brought in by ambulance approximately 15 minutes ago. She had a severe asthma attack on her flight. The words struck Dimitri with the force of a physical blow. The sterile conference room, the polished mahogany table, the faces of his colleagues. It all dissolved into an insignificant blur. What? He managed, his voice a raw whisper. Is my daughter okay? She's being treated in our emergency department. Her condition is stable for now. But Mr. Kingston, it was critical. We need you here immediately. 20 minutes, Dimitri said, the words catching in his throat. I'm on my way. He was already in motion, his body acting on pure instinct. Jacket, keys, the abandoned presentation, none of it mattered. Is she conscious? Can she breathe? He pleaded into the phone. The voice on the other end was calm, professional. She's stable, sir. Just get here safely. We'll explain everything when you arrive. Dimitri tore through the hotel lobby, the squeal of his rental car's tires a scream of protest as he peeled out of the parking garage. His mind was a maelstrom of unanswerable questions. Zara had her inhaler. She always had it. She knew what to do. 5 years of perfect management, of careful routines. How could it all have gone so wrong? He covered the distance to Seattle Children's Hospital in a record 17 minutes, abandoning the car in the emergency bay without a second thought for tickets or towing. He burst through the glass doors of the entrance. I'm Dimitri Kingston, my daughter, Zara Kingston. Where is she? The nurse at the desk looked up, her eyes widening with recognition. She had been briefed. Room 4, Mr. Kingston. Dr. Morrison is with her. Go straight back. He ran, fueled by a terror that made his heart pound against his ribs and his hands tremble uncontrollably. Down a sterile corridor, past a blur of faces, and then he saw her. His Zara, a tiny figure lost in a hospital bed, an oxygen mask fogging with each shallow breath. An IV line snaked into her small arm, and the rhythmic beeping of the monitors was the only sound in his universe. She looked so fragile, a porcelain doll on the verge of shattering. Zara? The name was a fractured sound, torn from his soul. Princess? Her eyes fluttered open. Daddy, she rasped, her voice muffled by the mask. He collapsed into the chair beside her, grabbing her small hand as tears streamed, hot and unchecked, down his face. He didn't care who saw. I'm here, baby. Daddy's here. You're safe now. A tall woman with kind eyes and graying hair stepped forward. Mr. Kingston, I'm Dr. Morrison. Your daughter is going to be okay, but I need you to understand how serious this was. She was minutes from death. The severity of the attack was compounded by a critical delay in treatment. Dimitri's gaze snapped up, the grief in his eyes turning to ice. Delay? What delay? She had her inhaler. It was in her backpack. According to multiple witnesses, including a Dr. Hughes who was on the flight and accompanied Zara in the ambulance, your daughter was prevented from accessing her medication for nearly 10 minutes after the attack began. Dimitri's expression became unnervingly still. When he spoke, his voice was a low, dangerous hum. Prevented? Someone stopped my daughter from getting her inhaler? The flight attendant, a woman named Christine Parker. Dimitri rose slowly from his chair, and the quiet intensity radiating from him was so palpable that Dr. Morrison instinctively took a step back. Tell me everything, he said, his voice like the grinding of glaciers. I want every detail of what happened to my daughter. And then I want the contact information for every single witness. Someone is going to answer for this. I promise you that. An hour later, as Zara slept, Dr. Patricia Hughes entered the room. Mr. Kingston, I'm Dr. Hughes. I was on the flight. Dimitri was on his feet instantly. Thank you for helping her, for being there. Dr. Hughes shook her head, her expression grim. I only wish I'd been allowed to help sooner. Mr. Kingston, what happened to Zara wasn't just negligence. It was a systematic campaign of cruelty that lasted for 3 hours. She recounted it all. The denial of water, the public humiliation over the bathroom, the refusal of food, the passengers who cheered it on. And finally, the moment when, as Zara gasped for air, her life-saving inhaler was kicked away. With each horrific detail, Dimitri's jaw tightened, his hands clenching into white-knuckled fists. What is the flight attendant's name? He asked again, his voice devoid of all warmth. Christine Parker. Dimitri pulled out his phone and made a call. James, it's Dimitri. I need everything you can find on Pacific Northwest Airlines Flight PN283 today. Crew manifest, security footage, passenger list, everything. My daughter's life was endangered. I don't care what it costs. Get it done. He hung up and turned back to the bed. Zara's eyes were open, watching him with a fear that shattered his heart. Daddy, am I in trouble? The cold fury in him dissolved instantly, replaced by an agony so profound it stole his breath. He sat beside her, stroking her hand. Trouble? Oh, baby, no. You did absolutely nothing wrong. Tears welled in Zara's eyes. I tried to be good, Daddy. I said please. I followed the rules, but she was so mean. And everyone agreed with her. They all said I was bad. Tell me, sweetheart, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Tell me every single thing. And through a broken, hoarse voice, Zara relived the nightmare. With every word she spoke, Dimitri's resolve hardened from iron into something unbreakable. 2 hours later, Zara was finally sleeping peacefully, her Aunt Grace now watching over her. Dimitri kissed his daughter's forehead. Daddy's going to make this right, he promised. He drove straight to Seattle-Tacoma International Airport and walked into the Pacific Northwest Airlines Operations Center as if he owned it. Sir, do you have an appointment? The receptionist asked. Tell Sandra Chen that Dimitri Kingston is here. She'll see me. The receptionist's eyes widened as she picked up the phone. Within minutes, Sandra Chen, the airline's CEO, hurried out, her hand extended. Dimitri, I just heard about your daughter. I am so sorry. He ignored her hand. Sorry doesn't fix what your employee did to my child. Sandra withdrew, flustered. I've suspended Christine Parker pending a full investigation. I want to speak to her now. That's highly irregular. So is torturing a 10-year-old girl for 3 hours, Dimitri countered, his voice chillingly calm. Where is she? She's with airport police, conference room B. Take me there, he commanded. As they walked, he added, I also want the names of the passengers who encouraged her. Sandra stopped. Dimitri, what are you planning to do? He met her gaze, and she saw not just anger, but a promise of utter annihilation. Justice. In conference room B, Christine Parker sat with her union rep and 2 officers. When Dimitri entered, she looked up, a flicker of fear in her eyes. Who are you? I'm Zara's father, he said softly, her face drained of all color. I am also the CEO of AeroVantage Airlines. Do you have any idea what that means for you? Christine stammered. Mr. Kingston, it was all a misunderstanding. Dimitri's voice was as sharp and cold as shattered glass. A misunderstanding? Let me clarify. You denied my child water. You humiliated her. You starved her. And when she was dying in front of you, you kicked her inhaler away and called her dramatic. Sir, please, I didn't realize she was actually dying, he finished for her. Her lips were blue. She collapsed. What more of a sign did you need? An officer intervened. Mr. Kingston, we are handling this. Good, Dimitri replied, never taking his eyes off Christine. Because I am pressing every charge imaginable. Child endangerment, assault, criminal negligence, violation of civil rights. Christine's face crumpled. Civil rights? I never said anything about her race. You didn't have to, Dimitri said, his voice laced with contempt. Your actions screamed it, and so did the passengers who egged you on. He turned to Sandra. I want that passenger manifest. I want to know who laughed while my daughter begged for a drink. I want to know who called her entitled. I want to know who told the decent people trying to help her to mind their own business. Dimitri, we can't release private passenger data, Sandra pleaded. Then I'll subpoena it, because this isn't just about one rogue employee. This is about a corporate culture that allows this to happen. A culture that rewards cruelty. Christine's lawyer spoke up. My client is prepared to offer a sincere apology. Dimitri let out a hollow, humorless laugh. An apology? My daughter is lying in a hospital bed, traumatized, believing she is somehow to blame because a plane full of adults told her she was. You think sorry fixes that? He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. Christine Parker, you will face criminal charges. You will lose your job. You will be held accountable, but that is only the beginning. He straightened, turning his chilling gaze to Sandra. As for Pacific Northwest Airlines, consider our code share agreement void. Our joint frequent flyer program terminated. Every partnership our companies share is over. You just lost $340 million a year. Sandra's face went ashen. Dimitri, please. We can discuss this. You want it back? He challenged. Then transform this company, top to bottom. I want mandatory anti-bias training, passenger protection protocols, and irrefutable proof that what happened to Zara can never, ever happen again. He walked to the door, then paused, looking back at the terrified flight attendant one last time. Oh, and Christine, my daughter's name is Zara. You should learn it. It's the name that will be in every headline tomorrow. Within 24 hours, the story exploded. Jennifer Martinez's video garnered 15 million views. The hashtag, Justice for Zara, trended worldwide. News outlets broadcast Christine Parker's mugshot alongside harrowing clips from the flight. The passengers who had supported her, Harold Mitchell, Karen Stevens, and Linda Weatherby, were identified and exposed by a furious public. Their employers were inundated with thousands of complaints. Pacific Northwest Airlines stock plummeted 12%. The outrage was a tidal wave, and Dimitri Kingston was just getting started. 5 days later, Zara was sitting up in her hospital bed, coloring. Dimitri worked on his laptop beside her, refusing to leave her side. Daddy, she asked quietly, why are so many people on the internet mad? Dimitri closed his laptop. Because what happened to you was wrong, Princess. And good people recognize that. But the people on the plane, they thought they were right. That's what makes it so dangerous, sweetheart, he said gently. Sometimes people do the most terrible things believing they are completely justified. Just then, Jennifer Martinez appeared at the door, her young son holding a bouquet. Zara, she said, her eyes welling with tears. I'm so sorry I didn't do more. You did enough, Zara replied with a small smile. You made me feel like I wasn't the problem. Jennifer's son shyly handed Zara a drawing of a girl with braids and a superhero cape. Zara hugged it to her chest. Thank you. It's amazing. Minutes later, Robert Chen arrived with a gift bag. Inside was a large stuffed unicorn with a rainbow mane. Zara gasped with delight. For being the bravest kid I've ever met, Robert said. Zara hugged the unicorn tightly. I'm going to name her Hope. 3 months later, Dimitri and Zara sat before the Senate Committee on Commerce Child Passenger Safety. What happened to my daughter is not an isolated incident, Dimitri testified, presenting data on the mistreatment of unaccompanied minors. I am proposing the Zara Kingston Child Passenger Protection Act. He outlined its provisions: mandatory training, real-time monitoring, and federal penalties for airlines that fail to protect children. When he finished, a senator turned to Zara. Zara, would you like to say anything? Zara walked to the microphone. Her voice, though small, was clear and strong. I was scared on that plane, not just of the flight attendant, but of all the people who agreed with her. I want other kids to know that if someone is mean to them, it's not their fault, and I want adults to know that just because someone is in charge doesn't mean they're right. Please, help protect kids like me. The room erupted in applause. 6 months after that nightmarish flight, Zara stood before a bright, welcoming building, the headquarters of the new Zara's Wings Foundation. With oversized scissors, she cut the ceremonial ribbon as cameras flashed. Dimitri took the podium. 6 months ago, my daughter's life was threatened by cruelty disguised as authority. Today, we transform that tragedy into hope. Zara spoke next, holding her unicorn, Hope. When bad things happened, I felt so small. But good people reminded me I was always big enough to matter. Every kid is. 2 months after that, Zara and Dimitri stood at an airport gate, ready to board a flight to Paris. A flight attendant greeted them warmly. Ms. Kingston, welcome aboard. It's an honor to have you. Zara smiled. Thank you. Are you having a good day? As she settled into her seat, she looked out the window at the clouds, no longer afraid. She clutched hope, opened her book, and prepared for her next adventure. Christine Parker was sentenced to 2 years in prison. The complicit passengers lost their jobs and faced civil litigation. The Zara Kingston Child Passenger Protection Act passed into federal law, and Zara's Wings has since protected thousands of young travelers. Evil does not always announce itself with a roar. Sometimes it hides behind a uniform, a procedure, and the passive agreement of those who just don't want to get involved. But courage does not require a crowd. It needs only one person willing to stand and say, this is wrong. The moment we stop caring how the powerless are treated is the moment we become part of the problem.